Shalom. Let's start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Harakah Kadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to those for that that's pushing this truth across four corners of the earth and all fair truth and sincerity. This I'm one about excuse me, this I'm one about back again in the city. I just want to go into not gonna make it too long. I'm going to about how this these Edomites, these so-called white people, red people, these red devils, these elites, how they are trying to come up with these scenarios or deceptions, lies and deceptions, amongst, Jake, with the, I say with the recent situation with the DC shooting, they say, the DC shooter, was a black man, a Jake, right? But it's like you gotta be like, nah, like it's just like it gotta be a setup, for that to even go down like that. But just to say, like these Edomites, these so-called white people, red people, devils, these elites and Trump, whoever, making the this coming up with these wicked plans, right? To set up Jake, so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelites to be, to be the bad people or whatever, right? But it all, they all they trying to do is, they trying to, they want to have a reason to come after, you so-called Negro, Latino, Israelites, and then, but ultimately, really, to come at men of the Lord, to come at this truth. So, and and like I said, the guy said he's Jesus or whatever, the shooter, right? But hey, man, like I say, hey, if you are aware and spiritually and in wisdom, knowledge, lawyer, how about Yahushua, if Lord Yahushua, is with you and dealing with you, you'll understand, like, it's all just a tactic, for these so-called white people, red Edomite devils, to try to, have a reason to come after you, so-called Negro, Latino, Native American Israelites, in these times going forward. So I'm getting to it. It's Isaiah 32:7. The instruments also of the true are evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speak right. Say so. The instruments also of the cruel are evil. So, hey, like I say, man, these wicked Edomite devils, man. They like I said, they come up with these, plans. They try to, like I said, they set up. Like I say, in these meetings or whatever, try to come up with something, a tactic, whatever, to come at, like I said, come at you, so-called Negro, Latino natives, which are Israelites, And like I say, they, they plans are evil, Like I say, they devise wicked devices, to destroy the poor with lying words. They come up with, like I say, a false story, to accuse, to accuse Jake, Israelites, so-called Negro, Latinos, even like say, needy speaker right, and like say, you have the men of the Lord, you have, the apostles and Elder Brother Raymond Stone, preaching, preaching the word of the Lord, or the Bible, or the word of the Lord Yahweh Shah, telling you so-called white people ready to eat my doves, like your kingdom, Lord Yahweh is gonna come back. Lord Yahweh gonna return and bring down your wicked system, your wicked rulership, and that you so-called white people ready to eat my doves are going to slavery, and just just rightly, and righteousness, just speaking right, truth, But the Edomites don't want to hear that, They don't want to hear that, And I say the men of the Lord, the apostles, and the elders, Brother Raymond Stone, they had this truth, crying sign, of the the heinous and unrighteous decrees, the heinous acts and the unrighteous decrees that these so-called white people, Edomites, are doing, to Jake, and just and I say the unrighteous decrees and these laws and the excuse me, just like say the just the unrighteous ways that the Edomite doves are pushing, right, and oppressing Jake, oppressing the so-called Negro, Latino natives, which are Israelites, with these unrighteous decrees and these laws and so forth, man. And constantly just harassing Jake for no reason, whatever it may be. Just like I say, because these Edomites, so-called white people, Edomite devils, they hate you Negroes. They hate you Negro, Latino natives, which are the Israelites. They hate y'all. You gotta know that's your enemy. The so-called white people, red Edomite devils are your enemy. You Negro, Latino natives, that's your enemy. So you trying to befriend this so-called white people, Edomite devils. Hey, they your enemy, man. And we in the times, hey, they even the average Joe, or whatever, they showing the true colors, and we in the end, they gonna show that they really hate you. You had the situation with the teacher. She was hanging a black dog, It was a girl dog, whatever it was. I think it was a girl dog. She hang it right in front of the kids. They just show you, hey, the Edomite, so-called white people, Edomite devils, they hate you, man. They hate you, man. And there's more, there's videos out there, hey, Jake, Edomites getting that Jake, we in that time, we in that time, nation shall rise up against nation, what I'm saying, Israelites, so-called Negro, Latino, and the Edomites, so-called white people, red people, doubles, gonna butt heads and go against each other, man, these times, and been like that, but it's gonna be, more intense, it's gonna be intensified, all that buddy, and try to get along. That's finna you finna see a lot of that that'll be done away with, man. It's finna be a lot of I say Negro, Latino natives, Israelites, and these so-called white people, red people, Edomite devils going at each other, going at it, you might see more videos or this and that, but this is the times that we're in, in a time of war, not in time of love and embracing. We're in a time of war, hate and war, war and hate, you could say, so it's a time of everything under the season, but I'm gonna go from there. Let's see, so I'm gonna go to Revelation 12. And I say, me, myself, foremost, and those that believe in Lord Yahweh Shine is truth. Just, be, aware, and aware your surroundings and know what's going on, uh, and then around you and so forth. Just and we sometimes when things can get real, it can get crazy going forward. Real crazy. Real serious times. That's ahead. This place. America, Babylon the Great going down. I said the more these prices, food prices and gas prices go up, more people gonna start being, getting frustrated and and being more, not in the mood or angry, and you're gonna have more folks more disgruntled. Disgruntled. Agitated of how things is how worse it's gonna get. It's getting bad now, but it's gonna get way worse than what it is. A lot of people, you gonna stop seeing folks just doing, whatever, right? But like I said, Lord Yahushua, he's gonna, protect his elect, from the, these wicked devices or plans that these so-called white people, red Edomite devils, set up, to try to come at the men of the Lord, the apostles and the elders, Brother Graham Millstone. Because like I said, Lord Yahushua, he's not gonna let these Edomite devils, just try to come in and do what they want to do. Because Lord Yahushua, he gonna make a way for the elect to get up out that situation. But or whatever situation that may be. I'm gonna go to Revelation 12:12. Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth they have but a short time. So therefore you rejoice, you heavens. The apostles and the elders, Brother Graham Millstone, those that believe in this truth. Hey, rejoice. Because the times. Hey, rejoice. The times that we're in. Hey, this place, America, Babylon the Great going down. It shouldn't be like, oh man, this place going down. Hey, shit. Hey, those that believe in this truth, and like I said, the apostles and the elders, Brother Graham Millstone, that for years been prophesying the downfall of the so-called white man Esau Edomite's world. Hey, we seen it. Ain't no point of being sad about it or whatever. Like, hey, it's coming to an end. It's good. It's a great thing. This place going down. But reading on, and ye that dwell in them, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. So woe means destruction. So destruction to to those that people that ain't right. 2/3 Israelites that don't want to get right. Don't want to believe in the wisdom, knowledge, Lord Yahweh, the truth. That the apostles and the elders, Brother Raymond, don't teach the true doctrine. That pushing out false doctrine and so forth. Different Israelite camps. And giving out the wrong message. And and just 2/3 Israelites that just out here doing wickedly. And these these heathens, these other heathen nations, or these so-called white people, red devil Edomites that's in America, Babylon the Great. A destruction is coming to those that is not of that righteous number. But reading on, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he have but a short time. So hey, these so-called white people, red Edomite devils. Hey, they're coming down with great wrath because they know they have a short time. Because they know that their time of rulership is coming to the end. Like I said, the days are speeding up. It's going by fast. They know their time is short, man. They time of trying to establish their NW agenda. They ain't got much time to do it. So they're gonna do all they can to come up with these unrighteous, to put up these to pass these unrighteous decrees. To come up with these tactics, put out these lies and deception out to the media, to the people, to come after, you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelites, you people, and like I say, people that don't want to, comply to the NWO agenda, to eventually, like I say, once that mark of the beast, once the RFID chip, which is the mark of the beast, be mandatory, you got to buy and sell with that micro C-HIP. If you don't comply and take it, they're gonna push you in a concentration camp. Those that don't want to, like I say, they buck up. They're gonna kill you in the streets. Kill you in a concentration camp, however it may be. But that's the times that we, are heading going forward as we go forward. The times that we're in now, is not as bad, but it's gonna get really, really bad. It ain't good now, but it's gonna get bad. Like I say, you still can move around, do this or that, but it's gonna come a time where you're not gonna be able to move around, and things are gonna get real, like I say, chaotic, out of control out here in the streets of America, Babylon the Great. But I didn't want to make this too long, so I'm gonna go to I'm gonna end off of Isaiah. Isaiah 59 and 19. Isaiah 59:19. So shall they fear the name of the Lord Yahweh from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the spirit of the Lord Yahweh shall lift up a standard against him. So shall they fear the name of the Lord Yahweh Bashan Shah, Yahweh Bashan Shah, Yahweh from the west. And what's that? America, right? Here in America, Babylon the Great. That the apostles and the elders of Brother Millstone push and teach the name of Yahweh Bashan Shah, right? That's that name that that these elites, these wicked Edomite devils fear, right? And like I say, when the enemy come in like a flood, these martial law troops, these UN troops or whatever, come in, they're gonna come in like a flood, they're gonna come rushing in, But the spirit of Lord Yahweh Bashan Yahushua, he gonna lift up a standard against these, UN troops that come in, like a flood, lift up a standard against these wicked Edomite devils, these elites, these are martial law troops, I'm saying, UN troops that come in, when you go to the word standard, make a way to escape. Matter of fact, I get it. Let me get it real quick. Go to the blue letter. So I don't get that, and I'm gonna play it.
Strong's H 5127. Noose.
So it's noose. Strong's H5. Strong's H 5127. So it said to flee, escape, to take flight, depart, disappear. That could happen. You know what I'm saying? Lo Yahweh Shah Yahshua can have to where, the men of the Lord, the apostles, the elders, and the elders of Brother Millstone, those that believe in Lord Yahshua and is pushing his truth, in the Lord Yahshua, in the spirit of Lord Yahshua, is pushing the correct doctrine, and teaching, and to the best, pushing the word to the best ability, and constantly believing and fighting, in his word, and pushing his word, and each and every day just fighting, for praying, fasting, for mercy, Lord Yahshua, and to be of that righteous number, hopefully, me myself first of all, hopefully, right? But you're gonna have men, Lord, that's gonna, take flight, you're having to depart, disappear, vanish, fly to attack. The spiritual power, right? Have make get out of the situation. UN troops trying to come at you. You can do whatever, right? It comes about. Just it can't be say me myself. Say doubt. Have no doubt with that. It can happen. Cause to disappear, hide. So Loyal Shah, how about Shah gonna make a way? He gonna lift up the standard. He gonna make a way. Hey, them UN troops come in. Hey, he gonna have men Lloyd. Have do some things, disappear. Fight back. Take flight. Get out that situation. However, get out of that situation, man. However it comes about, But so I didn't want to make this too long. So I hope this was edifying. So again. I like give all praise and glory to you. I hope this was edifying. So again, I like give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahshua, Bahashem, Harakat Kadash, to the apostle elders, to the Sisakan brothers, to the few Akwaf sisters that do listen, keep the faith in Yahushua, keep fighting with that shit. Shalom.